Get my blood pressure up now.
Woohoo!
Woo! There we go. Woo! Woo! Oh yeah.
Good morning, Timothy. And good
Maya.
morning. Yes, good morning to everybody who joined us in Clubhouse, LinkedIn, also YouTube and Facebook. Happy New Year and all the best for this 2025 and beyond. We're here once again with you on the first Sunday, yes, of 2025 with Timothy, this time reporting from Yokohama. So I'm going to give you the screen, Timothy, in a bit, but before that, let me just say that this is our 2004th episode, the 2004th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Esquire, the government relations consulting firm in downtown Tokyo, and me, the host, Maya Matsuoka. So thank you very much for being with us throughout these almost 4 years. We appreciate your support and we continue. So, Timothy, let's see what we are going to hear about today.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya, and Happy New Year. Welcome to 2025. And thank you, Maya, for enforcing us to be here every time, 204 times consecutively every Sunday. I really can't say I enjoy it because I've got other things that are going on, but this is what we do. And I really appreciate the audience. I appreciate your persistence and your encouragement to continue this. So today, Maya, as you can see from the background, I'm reporting from the Red Brick Warehouse. It's the former tax warehouse sitting on the water here in Yokohama Port. The club that I belong to, the club actually that I set up in maybe 25 years ago, the Rolls-Royce and Bentley Owners Club, is having an event today, and I have to be here. And so we're not quite in position yet, but in the background, the club members' cars will be passing through, so you can kind of take a look at the kind of quality and the number of cars that are coming in. They should be coming in pretty soon. But I would like to get through this briefing as quickly as possible and get to the Q&A so that I can park my car in line. But let's get right onto the briefing, if you don't mind. So thank you again, everybody, for 2025. The yen closed out Friday at 157, a little bit richer than it did last week. Last week it was at 157. The week before that it was at 156. So there's a little bit of tenuous movement in the yen. It looks like it's somewhat stabilizing now. Let me see what else is going on. President Carter died 100 years old on Tuesday. That's a very sad thing to happen. He received lots of accolades from President Biden and also from incoming President Trump. So he will be always remembered as the president who took over after Gerald Ford. You might remember it was Nixon, and Nixon was ejected from the presidency. He got Gerald Ford in, and then Carter survived Gerald Ford, and then it was just the march until we have the administration that's coming in less than in exactly 15 days. So the diet, by the way, is not in recess right now. It's just the extraordinary diet session was something that was initiated by the Prime Minister to deal with certain issues, one of them being the supplemental budget. But the diet goes into its formal session on the 24th of this month. So that will be the diet session. It runs for 150 days. And at the end of that, we anticipate an upper house election. And so that is going to dictate a lot of other things that are going to be happening. President Biden prohibited the sale of U.S. steel to the Japanese conglomerate. So that will not be happening. It's created a lot of ire among Japanese business circles, and a lot of people in the United States are unhappy with that kind of political move by the president. The South Korean president, Mr. Yoon, has avoided arrest. There's a lot of turmoil going on there. It's very rich in political dynamics and intrigue. There's a lot going on there. We continue to watch that, and it also has an impact on U.S., Japan, South Korean relations. The cabinet approved, just before we closed up last week, a 9.4% increase in the national budget. This was the cabinet promoting to the rest of the Diet the budget that they are going to try and pass on April 1st or by April 1st. So this is a big deal. It's kind of setting the terms and the conditions for passing a budget. And then the Diet, from when they go into session from the 24th until April 1st, they will be debating and cutting and adding on different parts of the budget. And the opposition parties are now coalescing for a fight. The Diet has been out of sessions, and it's been New Year's, so some people are going home, some people are on international travel, but the opposition parties are loading up for bear, and that's absorbing a lot of news on television and in the newspapers these last couple of days. The Trump presidency starts in 15 days, as I said, on the 24th of this month. It's always on a Monday. It's almost always a freezing day like it is here in Yokohama. And it turns out that Mr. Ishiba is unlikely to meet with President Trump or incoming President Trump before he becomes president. And the most likely time, since the schedule is going to be really packed up, is the 3-day weekend on February 22nd to the 24th. There's a 3-day weekend that we've got upcoming there. And that looks like the time that the pregnant time for Mr. Ishiba to first meet the President of the United States. So let's see how that goes. And let me turn it back over to you. We've got a truck pulling in right now, unfortunately, just like we did last year. But
right.
Let me turn it over to you, Maya.
Thank you, Timothy. So once again, before we get into your specific points, I want to thank our sponsors for supporting this platform and making this dialogue possible. Well, a great thank you for our sponsor, Kanchu. That is Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku, or once again, in short, Kanchu. Kanchu is based in Yokohama, and the company offers bilingual services in buying and selling real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama. The company does property management and investment property as well. If you have any projects, please reach out to James Howell. Contact him at james@kanachu.com, or you can also connect with him on LinkedIn. His contact details are in the description of the YouTube video of this recording, so you'll find it there. Yes, this is something that we recommend if you really want to work in this field. And with this, Timothy, I turn it over to you. It's once again show time.
Okay, thank you very much, Maya. So
Right.
let's see who else is going to park behind me. So the Diet will come into session on the 24th. That is on Friday. The Emperor will come in. He'll open the Diet. Likely, the Prime Minister, Mr. Ishiba, will make some sort of a formal statement, but he might not. He might just leave it up to the Emperor. Everybody will be in their best suits, maybe their morning suits with the tails, tuxedos, and the Diet will reconvene. It's a lot of splendor, a lot of pomp and circumstance, but not much really being done to be expected on that Friday. And then on this following Monday, that we go full bore, and it's going to be a tough session for the Prime Minister. He's got a lot of things that are hanging over from the supplementary budget process, which was a 27-day period for passing a supplemental budget, and also having an opportunity to talk with the opposition parties. The Prime Minister and the LDP is in a difficult position because they lack 13 seats to be able to push through legislation. You need 50% plus one in order to pass legislation in the upper house and the lower house, and then bills become law. And the LDP, because of the trouncing that they received in the last lower house election, lacks 13 seats. So it's got to cozy up to one of the opposition parties that is amicable to doing that. And initially, you might recall, the Democratic Party for the People went from 8 members to 28 members now. And they became the favorite darling, but there was a little bit of controversy with their leader, Mr. Tamaki, holding really strongly on the floor of tax-free salaries for the general population. He wanted to push that number from 1.03 million yen per year tax-free to 1.78 million per year. And he's been really dogged on that. And they weren't able to get a closure on that. So that's hanging over. The Constitutional Democratic Party received assurances to spend more money, for the government to spend more money on the Noto Peninsula earthquake. That was almost exactly a year ago that happened, and the people are still suffering there. So the Constitutional Democratic Party is pushing for the government to spend more there. They did get that. And then Ishin also has 38 seats. So it does qualify if you can exceed that 13 necessary with additional members voting for your proposals. All the merrier. But Ishin wants to have free education, free public education for all people in Japan for up to high school. So they received some sort of assurance that we will try and do that in the formal diet session. But the real big thing is to pass the budget by April 1st. So that's what the Prime Minister is going to be pretty much dedicated to. That requires a lot of horse trading, but the LDP must be in a position to secure legislation so that the LDP and Mr. Ishiba as Prime Minister looks good. He looks golden for this preparation for the upper house election. And in fact, I think all of the forces right now are just focused on the upper house election. The date of that election is not set, but 50% of the upper house must go for election this summer. So the most likely scenario is that this diet session will run its full term. It will end in July, and then there will be an announcement the announcement for the upper house election will be at some time, probably maybe after the budget is passed, a couple of months advance notice. And then as we approach that, the likelihood of either the Prime Minister or the opposition parties coalescing their forces and saying, we're sick of you, we're sick of the LDP, we want to push for a vote of no confidence. And then there is a closure of the House by coincidence to fall the election day for the lower house falling on the same day as the election for the upper house. You save money, you save a lot of time on election strategy. It happens from time to time, and I think the forces are building for that scenario. So that's what the Prime Minister really needs to avoid. So the big deal that will start the year is barring members from receiving political funds in order to enhance their party's standing. The LDP has been famous for that, and that was the process that kind of triggered the investigation into the slush fund scandal. It's a separate issue, but it's somewhat tied to it. So the Constitutional Democratic Party and many of the other opposition parties are saying that strategy only benefits the LDP because you get these corporate donations. So we want to quit the corporate donations. We want to quit political dantai group. Groups of people, affiliated groups of people from contributing political funds to the parties, and in particular the LDP, because that just benefits them and they get stronger and everybody else becomes weaker as a consequence of that. There is also the hangover issue of the ethics committee in the upper house and the lower house. You might recall that the plan was for the people who admitted, who confessed, who said, yes, I took money from my party or from my faction, and I didn't report it as a tax issue. I need to have a hearing in the ethics committee, and I need to be questioned by that, and the public needs to know what's going on with that. If they do that, in fact, before the extraordinary diet session ended, only a very small handful, maybe 6 or so members of the parliament actually were able to make a testimony. So there's about 60 more people that need to go through that process, and that could really generate a lot of animosity towards some of these members, many of whom will be running for election in the upper house when the election eventually occurs this summer. The other issue is the tax-free salary issue. The floor right now, the LDP has kind of decided on a number of 1.23 million yen per year salary. But the Democratic Party for the People, Mr. Tamaki's party, wants it to be 1.78, and he's really holding firm to that. So conceding on that might make the LDP and the Democratic Party for the People, their votes go with the LDP and Komeito to pass legislation, thereby making the LDP look a little bit better, thereby making the prime minister look a little bit more effective. If you've seen any television these last couple of days, you've noticed he looks tired, he looks frustrated, he looks like he's just kind of going through the motions. So it could be just the end of the year. It has been a tough year for him by all counts. And for Ishin, 38 members that the LDP could gain there, Ishin wants free education up to high school for the entire citizenry. That is their policy imperative. And if the LDP grants that, then they could gain the support of the LDP in passing legislation. So all of this builds up. We will kind of know pretty much by the end of March, when they pass the budget, how those coalitions are working out. So the deal is with the prime minister, who can he cozy up to? There are 3 main opposition parties that qualify to provide those 13 necessary votes. The largest of those is the Constitutional Democratic Party that has 138 members, and they're more likely to oppose anything of the LDP and try and get the other opposition parties to join with them, an unlikely suitor for the LDP. On the other hand, either Ishin or the Democratic Party for the People, they hold a lot of hope for the LDP. It's just that their demands are pretty stringent. And if the LDP gets in bed with one of them in a very secure way, then they become, kind of an enemy to the other opposition parties too. On the other hand, if Mr. Noda of the Constitutional Democratic Party is successful in building a coalition of these opposition parties to kick out the LDP, to force perhaps a no confidence motion, and to win widely in the LDP in the upper house election, it's possible that the LDP could be flipped, and then the opposition party or a coalition of the opposition parties could come in. The dangling piece of morsel at the end of that stick is a cabinet position for members of the opposition parties, which is almost an impossibility in the current scenario. So that's what's going on for them. The other thing that's going on with Ishin no Kai is the expo. It's less than 100 days before the expo starts. It will be on April 13th, run for 6 months until October 13th. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of reputation going on with that. If the expo goes well, Ishin goes well. If the expo goes poorly, Ishin is not going to go very, very happily into the future. So that might be a carrot for the prime minister to use, but a lot is really left up in the air. Maya, I'm going to end it here and turn it back to you, see what else we can generate in terms of Q&A, and try and wrap this thing up before I freeze.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, yes, okay. I was planning to mute myself and I didn't, thankfully. So thank you, Timothy, for this. And before we go on with the questions we have generated on the platforms, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Houze, that is Houze Inc. They are also based in Yokohama and they offer bilingual services in custom home design, construction, and renovations. They also do commercial building construction. If you want to benefit from their services, please connect with Hana or Howell on LinkedIn, or you can also reach out to her at hana@kanachu.com. Hana represents the two companies, and you will also find her contact details in the description of the YouTube video. Well, thanks a lot, Houze Inc., and thanks a lot, Hannah. Timothy, now we go back to the questions which we have already received on LinkedIn first. We'll start with the questions and the comments and questions from Byron.
My shivering is not attributed to the fact that I'm getting questions from Byron. I'm shivering because I'm a little bit cold. That's it.
Okay, yes. All right, please forgive me for this, and sorry for you being cold and having to be here. But, well, okay, let's try to be brisk. So, the first comment from Byron comes: the exceptionally close relationship between the US and Japan is well known. Japan, of course, was under occupation for many years following the end of World War II. Question 1. In today's world, how is the coordination between the US and Japan accomplished in actual practical terms? How much of that coordination is done from the US Embassy in Tokyo, and how much of that is directly from senior officials in Washington, D.C.?
Great question.
Which offices and what rank officers are in charge of managing that relationship from the Washington, D.C. and the Tokyo end? This is the first question.
Okay, well, Mr. Ishiba is really strong in defense. I think of all of his attributes, that's one of the. I mean, he describes himself as a otaku for military matters. Mr. Trump is not particularly well known for his defense acumen, but he has people who are. And I think defense issues will become a big issue. So Mr. Ishiba will be able to shine in some way with the defense issues. So the budget was passed with an increase into the defense spending. We all know that. That was all insisted on by the United States for the Japanese government to contribute not 1% of GDP, but 2% of GDP. We're halfway through that. It goes until 2027, and the defense budget increase is obvious in the budget that was just proposed by the cabinet, and that will be passed eventually on April 1st. So in terms of the logistics and the U.S. Embassy, and is it going to be coming out of Mar-a-Lago or out of the White House? I think it's difficult to tell, but there's been a lot of movement of the U.S. forces moving into Japan, and the defense forces melding and joining forces and sharing capabilities. There is a new office being set up by the United States Defense Department, and they're looking for a location. It looks like they have settled on a location in Akasaka, which is right downtown. So it's a rather large office for coordination and cooperation between Ministry of Defense, which is in Ichigaya. That's where our office is, Maya, and Akasaka, which is, it's a 5-minute, 10-minute cab ride between those two areas. So it looks like there, in fact, is, instead of going to Yokota or some of the air bases, or maybe even Hardy Barracks, which is also downtown in Roppongi, actually, I think they're going to establish a new office here in Akasaka. So in terms of logistics, it seems like the United States military presence is going to be enhanced and increased, and it's going to be somewhat visible. You already know that some of the airports and port facilities are sharing some of the repair and landing rights and that sort of thing for like-minded allies, and we haven't seen much of that yet, but I think that's something that will be coming up more and more in 2026. With regard to the facilitation between the U.S. administration and the Japanese administration, I can't really comment very authoritatively on that, but it's a good question.
Well, thank you for providing your insights. And there is a second comment followed by a second question. So the result for the proposed Nippon Steel acquisition of U.S. Steel appears to have been the worst possible outcome with usage of national security as the
Mhm.
reason to block is is the first time ever post-war for a Japanese company. The question, the tightly written rejection signals that the timing, the approach, and the Nippon Steel consultants, such as former Secretary of State Pompeo, who is neither trusted by Democrats nor by the incoming Trump administration, were all totally flawed. Would you revisit this matter that I had asked about a few weeks ago in the light of this devastating rejection? And the question was a few weeks ago, the question we received from Byron was, could things have been done better in a different way so that they could have led to a positive result for Nippon Steel?
I'm sure a lot of people are asking that same question in Washington, D.C. and in Tokyo as well. There's a lot of ire and anger that's going on um, with regard to the decision. So if I think in retrospect, it's kind of sitting in your armchair after the fact and reviewing it. I think more effort should have been put on this final total veto that was possible by the White House for national security issues. I'm sure they spent time and effort on that, but I think you can do all of the right paperwork, you can do all the strategy, all of the budgeting, all of the, encouraging the unions. I mean, a tremendous amount of money and effort and intelligence has been spent on this, all for it to be, the switch to be clicked off by the president of the United States, on national security grounds. So yes, I think that those issues should have been quelled earlier, and some sort of a the deadline was also at the end of 2024. It's now 2025, and the president came out with his prohibition just yesterday or the day before yesterday. Um, so it's hard to say. I don't want to get too much into something that I don't know enough about, but yeah, in terms of lobbying and putting your um, your effort where there's going to be payoff, obviously they just didn't have the access or the confidence to gain pre-approval of the acquisition before everything else was done. They tried to put all the ducks in a row, and finally, when I mean, for political reasons, obviously, President Biden decided to pull the plug on it.
Right, but it also seems that Nippon Steel hasn't given up, and well, Nikkei actually reported that they are going to file a lawsuit, so that probably that decision could be turned over. Okay, so
Yeah,
thank you very
because
much. Yeah,
because a lot of people, they banked on it. They put their money and their energy into securing this deal. And every time you have a deal like this, there are go no go decision points, and so you put your career and your reputation on the line when you sign off on those. So there's a lot of people that are disappointed as a consequence of that. So they might be going at it for a second bite. I just don't know if it'll win over, because Mr. Trump has also said that he's opposed to that acquisition too.
right. Okay, thank you for this. We'll continue following the developments and report on this as well. And well, there is another question on LinkedIn from Hiroku-san, and the question is, it is said that in coming the coming President Trump will issue over 25 executive orders, including raising
Yes.
tariffs. Which of those do you think would have the biggest impact on Japan?
Um, I don't, I don't know all of the executive orders. I don't think any of them implicate Japan, although the Japanese Automobile Association is concerned about it, because automobiles are a huge part of the economy. I mean, they're a huge part. They're more than 25% of the Japanese economy is focused on, automobiles, automobile parts, production and repair, that sort of thing. So similarly, in the United States, automobiles are a very big component of the overall economy. But I think there are people in the audience who are much more well versed on what's going to happen in the first 2 or 3 days of the presidency, and maybe they could comment on that if they have the time, Cam.
No, okay. Yeah. So thank you for that as well. Let me check. Yes, we've got some comments, I think, and questions also in Clubhouse. Going there now. Okay, we've got yes. Okay, Christopher, I'm sorry, the volume in Clubhouse is very soft because of incompatibility between the platforms. I stream
Yep.
on 4 platforms at the moment, and Clubhouse doesn't like it. That's the reason for it. And Happy New Year to you too. Okay. Oh, it looks like yes. All the comments we've got in Clubhouse are actually New Year's wishes from
Good.
Christopher. Yes, from Ryan. Banjie and also Hiroko-san. Thank you very much, all of you. And Timothy, once again, so you mentioned that the next diet session is going to continue most probably until the election in July, so it's going to run its full course.
Yes.
But a couple of weeks ago, you actually mentioned that there is a possibility of a change in government once again, once the 2025 budget has been approved. Do you still stand behind that, or what is your insight at this point of time?
So that juncture can happen at any time. It can happen even before the budget. And the trigger points are either a no confidence motion or the prime minister saying, look, I'm sick of dealing with you guys. I can't work with all of you. I'm going to close down the House. We'll go for an election, let the voters decide, and then let's try this again. That's most likely, if that's going to happen, that's most likely to occur after the budget is passed. If the budget is not passed by April 1st, it's not like the government is going to close down, but it is a big deal. And I think everybody's dedicated to passing the budget on April 1st. More likely, the most likely scenario is that the diet will run its course. Mr. Ishiba will remain as prime minister. When the diet finishes, then the shenanigans will begin. On the other hand, though, there has been no real big scandal in the Ishiba administration. Usually when there's a new prime minister, there's a new cabinet, somebody's in trouble, somebody slept with somebody spent some money, and it's a big brouhaha. We haven't had that yet. So it's Mr. Ishiba should be thankful for the calmness that's dealt with his administration. But I don't think the knives have really come out. I think people have had other things to do, their own pet projects, and the LDP is significantly weakened. It hasn't been this weak in 30 years. So I think probably the opposition is just biding their time. They're strengthening their forces. Currently, what they're trying to do is divide the election districts so that the opposition parties don't fight among themselves and have maybe 3 or 4 candidates in an election district. And the LDP, since it's been dominant for so long, they kind of pick it up, and then they win the most number of votes in each election district. And I think what the opposition party under Mr. Noda in particular is saying, guys, let's calm down. You take that one, I'll take this one, and it's just our party against the LDP. So let's not have my party and your party against the LDP, and then we split the vote. So I think that is going on robustly. And I think people will just keep it calm until the diet session ends. But you just never know. I mean, it's politics, so anything can happen.
Right. Well, thank you very much for this. We have a couple of more questions, which I will keep for next time, for next Sunday, so that you can go and actually report to duty.
I'm kind of okay. The sun is warming me up, and I've gone through Byron's questions, and I'm not bleeding yet. So
no, not yet. So yeah, it's it is 8:55. You said that you need to go by 9 o'clock. What?
No, they just opened in the gate by 9 o'clock. And so you can see that the cars are packed up. The gate is closed. And then at
Right?
9 o'clock, they open the gate. So I've got plenty of time. There'll be, about 60 cars that pass behind me. So maybe for those of the audience who are watching via LinkedIn, you can enjoy some of the cars going by as we deal with some of the questions.
Right. Okay, so then the next question that comes up is, since there are talks about Prime Minister Ishiba meeting with President-elect Trump once he is inaugurated, and so the meeting is probably planned for February. Sorry. So, do you think that that will have any positive effect on the ratings of Mr. Ishiba, not among the general public, but among the opposition parties? That is the question.
Whose question is this?
Oh, it's my question. Sorry.
Oh God, I just wanted to say somebody's really wants to put me in trouble. So you never know. You never know how Mr. Ishiba is going to act or be perceived, or what kind of situation is going to come up. He could come up like roses. I don't know. Everybody remembers, Mr. Abe trying to cozy up to Mr. Trump and be friendly, and then they went golfing, and then he fell backwards into the sand trap, and it really just depends. But you also saw, I'm sure, Mr. Ishiba eating an onigiri a couple of weeks ago, and looking just really, really, I don't know, like a buffoon, just trying to eat a quick lunch and he was caught off camera cramming an onigiri into his mouth and talking at the same time. So he doesn't have the acumen and the delicacy that Mr. Kishida did. Mr. Kishida was the longest serving foreign minister, so you've got a lot of skills that you develop over time. And on the world stage, Mr. Ishiba he's not that polished. So with Mr. Trump, you just never know. You just are hopeful, and it's not going to be a golf outing. I don't know if Mr. Ishiba as being a golfer at all, or even a great golfer at that. So it's unlikely to be a golf outing when he meets with Mr. Trump, but it is an opportunity for him to meld and form some sort of a relationship. But gosh, I don't know. That's a hard one to predict. And if you watch Mr. Ishiba on TV recently, it looks like he's just trudging along. He's really just trying to survive from meeting to meeting, and you can imagine the pressure that he's under. And a meeting with Mr. Trump is a big deal. It's a big deal for Japan. There are three things that the prime minister must do. One of the three things that he must do to survive as prime minister is build an effective and resilient relationship with the Trump administration. And I have no good feelings yet about how that process is going on. I think Mr. Ishiba has been consumed with other things, but he's got the foreign ministry that is doing this day in and day out. But still, Mr. Biden is president for the next 15 days, so maybe their efforts are split. But it is a big deal. He needs to form a good, resilient relationship with Mr. Trump.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that as well. And going back to the increase in taxes, the corporate tax and tobacco tax, so in order to support the defense budget.
Right.
We all know that in Japan, basically the government and businesses have close relationships. So I wonder though that whether this time it's not going to be some resistance on the side of the business, for example, Keidanren and so on, because the corporate tax in Japan is already over 30%, and raising it even further may actually, make operations and business life difficult for the corporations here and the businesses as well. What is your view on this?
Okay, we already know that corporate taxes are going up. They need to go up in order to pay for the budget. The budget, as being proposed by the cabinet at the end of the year, 25% of that is funded by debt. So they know they shouldn't do that, but they don't have any other options. They've got to raise corporate taxes. They've got to tax the hell out of tobacco, and they've got to figure out how else they can fund this. And one of the obvious ways is the consumption tax, which is now at 10%, to raise that to 11 or 12%. It probably wouldn't be an 11% jump, just a 1% jump. They would make it a 2%, maybe even a 3% jump. Or individual taxes on maybe salaries, that sort of thing. But they have to do something. And when they're trying to get into bed with one of the opposition parties, their demands always cost money. So let's say, for example, they accept the demand from the Democratic Party for the People, and they move the floor of tax-free salaries from 1.03 to 1.78. That money needs to come from the public funds. And that means that the budget now has been reduced. And you've got the United States saying, you know, rather than 2% of GDP, it needs to be 3% of GDP because it's just not enough. You're not reaching some sort of critical mass. So yes, no matter what he does, he's going to be hampered by that. And I think Keidan Ren is going to be in some opposition to it. It has a lot of influence over how that is done. It's got a lot of influence on Diet members and how they're perceived in their election districts. And with an election coming up in less than 6 months, or actually in almost 7 months, there's a lot of horse trading, and it's not just between the opposition parties or within the political factions within the LDP. I mean, it's all over. He's surrounded by these kinds of challenges, and how you pay for it is, you know, the critical issue. You can't support it anymore with more debt. The International Monetary Fund has been wagging its finger at the Japanese government for a long time. We've reported on this a couple of times. Don't finance your budget with more debt by issuing more debt, and then they just did it again. So it's a hard issue to address.
Right. Okay. Thanks a lot for that as well. And it looks like we have gone through the questions, all the questions so far. Exactly when you started thawing, I can see that, you know, unfreezing and not melting yet, but still, yes. Well, I really appreciate your being with us this morning, Timothy, and reporting, even though you have this event coming up later from 9 o'clock. Actually, they have started, I believe. And thank you very much for this. To everybody.
It
Yes?
seems either I would be freezing here in Yokohama at the Rolls-Royce and Bentley event here at Akalenga, or I would be in Katsuyama doing the same thing with the wind coming off the Tokyo Bay as I was working on the good ship Grimm's.
Right. Whew, yes. Well, either way, right. But very much appreciated, really, the insights you share with us and the time you share with us every Sunday morning. I know that you have no other choice, as you say, but
You're right.
That's your beautiful car there.
There we go. That's usually my studio.
Mm-hmm.
When
Right.
I'm at Katsuyama.
Mm-hmm.
But now the cars are starting to move in, and I know you're getting ready to sign off, but I just wanted to show you a little bit of but look at Yokohama. It's just so fantastic, isn't it?
It is.
Right here
It's
on the
beautiful,
water.
yeah. Clear skies, nice view. The harbor looks beautiful, yes.
So for anybody in the audience that is in Tokyo, please, you know, consider coming by. Look at some of the cars, kick the tires, not too hard. And a day in the sunshine.
A day in the sunshine, yes. Until what time are you going to be there?
This goes on till probably around 3 o'clock. Last year, we do this every year. Last year, there were more than 4,000 people that just came by, that milled by, that talked to the owners, that looked inside the cars. You know, sit inside the cars, take a look at the engines, see why these cars are considered to be they're probably the most famous cars in the world, and
Right.
see why.
Yes, seeing why. Also, I wanted to say just a brief comment that when I walk, the streets of Tokyo, I don't get the feeling that there are so many Rolls-Royce cars and Bentley cars here in Japan or in Tokyo for this matter. But when you go to this event and you see them lined up and beautifully, just shining in the sun, it really
Yes.
makes you reconsider, oh, look at this beauty. Wow. This looks like one of the cars that is kept in the Wakui Museum.
Yes, it is. It looks like that's Mr. Wakui's one of Mr. Wakui's collection.
Wow, wonderful. Okay, so this was the teaser for the event, your event today, Timothy. And to everybody else who stayed with us, thanks a lot. And let us once again say thank you to our sponsors, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanchu. You can find them at kanachu.com. You can also connect with James at kanachu.com. Also, Houze Inc., represented by Hana Howell. You can connect with her on LinkedIn or contact her also at her email, which is hana at kanachu.com. Thank you very much to James and Hana and Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku and Houze Inc. It is a pleasure to represent you here, to have you as our sponsors. And Timothy, please enjoy the
Yes,
event and share photos with us
I
later.
will.
Okay,
Thank you
great.
very much, and thank you for your sponsorship, Kanachu. And let's make
Houze. Yes.
2025 a great year for all of us.
For all of us, yes, let's do that. Thanks a lot and Happy New Year to everybody. Have a great week ahead.